The 2020 state budget will not be presented on Sunday, rendering Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plans for passing a one-year budget nearly impossible to carry out and increasing the likelihood of another general election in Israel. Alternate Prime Minister Benny Gantz has insisted on passing a two-year budget and preventing Netanyahu from using the failure to pass a budget to enable the initiation of an election in which Netanyahu would serve as caretaker prime minister. Gantz is optimistic, with people close to him saying, "We hope a solution will be found," but to say we're optimistic would be an exaggeration. The deadline for passing a budget is August 25th, 100 days after the formation of the government. If neither a budget nor a bill to extend the deadline is passed by then, an election by November will be initiated automatically, which would be Israel's fourth election in under 19 months. And we're now joined live from the Knesset in Jerusalem by Alex Kushnir. He is member of Parliament for Israel Beitenu. Thank you so much for joining us today. First and foremost, I want to ask you, with no budget, a prime minister that will be called to appear in court hearings starting December, perhaps 3 times a week, and protests that we're seeing again and again, day after day in Jerusalem and now in Caesarea as well. How long do you think this government can last?
Well, as less as possible, for my opinion. The problem is that every issue, political or economical, is pledged to the interests, the personal interest of Benjamin Netanyahu. The only thing that he considers is what is better to him to survive politically and how to avoid the court process that he is going through. And this is something that should be stopped, because the state of Israel is not possessed by Netanyahu, it's possessed by its people.
Okay. If we are approaching a fourth round of elections, the last poll published on Friday by Israel Hayom gives Israel Beitenu 8 seats, and 12 gave you 7 seats just a few days ago. But run me through a scenario in which a fourth election takes place. How do you think Israel Beitenu would do?
First of all, we are ready for the elections, but I think that going for elections right now is like, national suicide committing, because in the conditions of the crisis, the health crisis and the economical crisis, the worst thing for Israel is going for elections.
So why wouldn't you enter the government and help Benjamin Netanyahu preserve this coalition? Because with Benny Gantz and Blue and White, it obviously isn't working.
I think that we can form an alternative government in Israel in the frame of this Knesset 23. So there is no need going to elections. We can do it inside the Knesset, and we can change the government.
Okay. Ayelet Shaked from Yamina will bring the Supreme Court override clause for voting after the Likud failed to do so under the coalition agreement with Blue and White. In 2008, Lieberman said he would vote for it. In 2019, he said against, and then for again. So what is your position? Because it seems like there isn't really one.
We will vote against this proposition of Ayelet Shaked, because we think that in this period, the country and the Knesset and the government should be concentrated only on 2 things. First, how we win the pandemic issue, and the second one, how can we rebuild our economy, and not other things should be considered now in the Knesset.
Okay, but let's speak about the bill itself. Do you see it as an anti-democratic legislation? Is that, or are you hold a similar view? Do you hold a similar view as Blue and White?
We think that the reform of the Supreme Court should be done, but not in these conditions, not when the Prime Minister is under the court process. It should be done when the situation is stable and when all the parties understand and come to mutual understanding what should be done. Of course, there is a lot of disadvantages that we should correct, that we should fix, but not now, not in this period. Everything which is not connected to Corona crisis and to economic situation in Israel should be put aside. This is our agenda, and that's what we do in the Knesset.
Okay, so in many ways, you're agreeing with Blue and White and the Prime Minister himself saying we will only vote on issues concerned with COVID-19 at the moment. I want to take a leap to another
but I have to correct you.
Yeah.
I have to correct you. The problem is that the Prime Minister only talks about this, but he does exactly the opposite.
Okay.
All what he's trying to do right now is how to take the country, the state of Israel, to the elections. That's what matters for him, and this is something that it's just not acceptable.
Okay. Take me through the logic of the Prime Minister as far as you see it. Being an interim Prime Minister again would allow him what?
Will allow him to do the two things that he wants to do for already 2 years. First is to bring the French bill to the Knesset in order to avoid the trial process against him, and another one is the Supreme law, that what Ayelet Shaked now is trying to do in order to make sure that the law of the French law will not be rejected by the Supreme Court.
Okay. I want to take a leap now.
And for that, he needs a stable coalition.
And ask you about the situation up north. There has been an escalation recently, both with Iran and then with Syria and Hezbollah, with one of their activists being killed by an action that is attributed to Israel in Syria. They said they would retaliate. We have not seen that happen yet. Will Israel Beitenu continue to back Netanyahu on security issues? What sort of support are you giving them with regards to the situation in Gaza, the West Bank, and the Northern Front?
Well, I think that we need to separate the issues. Whatever happens on the northern border, I think it's a right policy, which is continued for I don't know, couple of years, trying to push away the Iran forces in Syria and in Lebanon. But what is going on in Gaza Strip, I think it's a different story, because we see once a 2 or 3 week that the rocket firing is continued, and we need to see how to stop it. Anyway, we are very constructive opposition. Whatever is good, we will support. Whatever is bad, we will reject and fight against it.